Hi, this is my review of the Mouse Guard role-playing game box set, second edition. This is a complete box set, that is, it contains everything that you need to play the Mouse Guard role-playing game, and it's even more than that, it includes an expansion, so this is an awesome deal. Now, this role-playing game is based on the popular award-winning Mouse Guard graphic novels or books. I even purchased one of my own just after checking out the role-playing game. I thought the theme was incredibly interesting, and I got my copy of one of the books. This is a game using the Burning Wheel, a modified version of the Burning Wheel system by Luke Crane. And David Peterson is the one behind the story, the plotline, and the art of the Mouse Guard. Now, let's talk about the quality of this excellent box set. Starting with the box itself, it's very nicely decorated. It's pretty easy to tell that David Peterson is somewhat of a visual genius. He uses a lot of soft colors, soft color palette, but it communicates a subtle vibration of intensity when it comes to the grittiness and the seriousness of these stories, because even though they are mice in a sort of like a fantasy version of planet Earth, there are no humans in that world, and the mice act very human, but that doesn't mean it's sort of like a tale or a saga for little kids. It handles some pretty serious and bloody business most of the time. Inside the box set, you have this plastic insert that holds all of the gaming tools or aids in place, and the entire box set protects everything very well done. You would usually expect a box set of this level of detail, of this level of completeness, of having everything that you need to play, to not adequately protect its contents. Sometimes sheets and books get stuck in the corner, but that is not the case with this box set. Everything fits very well in the box and is incredibly well protected. And as you can see, the dice, they are pretty nice to look at. You have symbols of snakes, swords, and axes. Snakes represent a failure, basically the 1, 2, and 3 on a 6-sided die, and the swords and axes represent success. Now, axes also represent a bit more because they are basically representing number 6. They could be considered a symbol of greater success when you use some resources in the game, such as fate points. And you also get these decks of cards, and they hold items or gear and conditions and actions that your mouse will be able to use and carry out during conflicts. So these are very nice as a sort of visual aid to organize things better during conflicts, and they are very nicely decorated. Let me show you a few of them. This is a card for a sword or an axe, depending on your preference on what weapon your mouse is going to use. All the weapons have different effects in gameplay. For example, the axe deals a bit more damage, but it's a bit more cumbersome when it comes to defense, and you need 2 hands to use it. And the sword is quite flexible, but that's it. You also have different types of armor, and these little sets of armor look quite cute. You have heavy armor or light armor. And conditions are also quite useful to have, because these cards, because as your mouse fails or perhaps even succeeds on certain trials and tests, he may actually gain a condition. He could get angry or hungry and thirsty, injured, or sick, with different effects. And these cards represent the types of actions that you can carry out during combat. Maybe you want to attack, maybe you want to defend. And as you can see, because of the illustrations, they represent each action perfectly. Now, you also have a Game Master screen, and this screen is a 3-panel screen. It's thin but durable. On this side, let me show you a bit more of the illustration. On this side of the screen, you have all the information that the players can look at, because it's basically information concerning the resolution of conflicts. You have a matrix of sorts and more information of different types of actions that you can carry out. And on the other side of the Game Master screen, you have the weapons, animal nature, and factors, and more information about the structure of the game and what symbols on the dice represent what numbers. All the information is quite useful. You also get a map of the territories that your mice are going to move around and about and into. You have two pads of sheets. You have a pad of Game Master sheets. It's a double-sided sheet, because on one side, this side, you have all the different sections to organize the campaign and keep track of things, and on the other side you get a lot of referential information, so you don't have to be flipping around the rulebook all the time. You have everything very well organized, so you can look at it in play at your convenience. You also have a pad of character sheets, of course. They are also double-sided. Now, this may look a bit complex because they are two-sided as well. However, the other side is mostly like a cheat sheet or quick reference of the rules, again for convenience of the players. And you have this expansion book called New Rules, New Missions. This book contains new weapons, and that's weapons in a very loose sense, because they are basically abstractions that can represent things that your characters use to succeed at different conflicts. So for example, if your character is going on a journey, your weapons are going to be supplies, maps, local guides. If you're delivering a powerful speech, you're going to be using an elevated position, controlling the mood, and it's basically stuff like that that turn any conflict into any sort of situation. That is, you can solve or develop any sort of situation that you can think of. If it's a cooking contest, if it's a long journey, you have a very flexible set of rules to carry out that process correctly. You also have information on mounts, on how to get them, how to tame them, and you also get proper weapons as well. For example, you have a mace that is very good against armor, but that's it. It's not as flexible as the sword or as damaging as the axe, but against armor it could bypass the armor protection. And you get new missions, but these new missions feel a bit more gritty and dangerous than the missions in the core book, and that's very nice and quite exciting, because it feels like at a more advanced level of play, and you have pre-generated characters. All of them are famous guard mice from the mouse guard books. So you can run your adventures right away and introduce new players to the game. In the core book you also have some very easy to apply rules to tweak these pre-gens or templates, so you can customize your mouse how you want it to be. And the quality of all the cards, the books, the map, the box, everything is just perfect. It's top notch. It's just, it looks so nice, and it's quite sturdy, so that's really good. Now let's take a look at the core rulebook. I really like the cover and the back cover because it represents the sort of gritty and sometimes grim or dark adventures. Because on the cover you may say, oh, that's just a mouse fighting a snake, but on the back you can see that perhaps this is a sort of like an extermination or assassination mission in which they have to destroy the eggs of that snake, because the offspring of that snake represents a potential threat to the entire species of the mice. Now, when it comes to, oh, this is just incredibly charming. The rulebook is very charming, and here you have a section so you can put your name that this book belongs to. I'm still practicing my handwriting. I want it to look just perfect, because this book looks so pretty, and I don't want to put my name as if I were signing a sort of like a receipt or something. I want to make it look really nice. And now, the rulebook is very interesting in its organization. It gives you an overview of the entire game first. Effectively, this is a very good introduction to what a role-playing game is. But this type of role-playing game feels more narrative-driven. It puts a lot more emphasis on the story and the plot line and character development. It's not a game about solving puzzles and challenges mechanically. It's more about developing your character and telling a very interesting story, the sort of story that you would tell when gathered around a campfire. So in a sense, the puzzle lies on a different level. It's more of a narrative puzzle that challenges you to get into the mindset of your mouse character. Now let's talk a bit more about the theme. What are these mice all about? What are they fighting for? What are they striving for? Well, the Mouse Guard feel a lot like the warrior bands of all, specifically in Irish and Scottish mythology and legend. They remind me a lot of the fighting men of the Red Branch of Ulster. They also remind me of the Fianna. So they are kind of like those orders of warriors and rangers. And the entire theme of the Mouse Guard feels kind of quite Celtic. That's the term, because you have a lot of Celtic flourishes when it comes to the narrative and even the decoration of shields. And the Mouse Guard are ruled by a female mouse, so you have this sort of matriarchy that's also quite in theme or in harmony with the Celtic color of it all. Because as you know, there are many powerful women in Celtic mythology, such as Skytha, the teacher of Cuchulainn, or Boudica. So you have these powerful women, and in the case of the Mouse Guard, they are ruled by a female mouse. And they basically protect all of the mice by finding paths, protecting trails, keeping them safe, taking care of predators, killing them or capturing them, or just driving them away. They feel sort of like the protectors of the entire mice civilization. However, they also deal with threats from within. In a sense, the Mouse Guard reminds me a bit of Warhammer at times and Warhammer 40k, because sometimes they do feel somewhat like space marines in their determination. You may think that this is just a story for kids, but these mice are very determined to succeed, to finish the mission, even if it costs their lives, to give their all for the entire for all the other mice. So this is sometimes the story is could get a bit serious, and that's awesome. Now the book talks about how you need to really role play your mouse. You have goals and beliefs, and according to how you portray your mouse, you're going to get story rewards at the end. You may end up rewarded by fate points and persona points, and fate points are very useful. You can use them to activate a sort of exploding dice mechanic when you are performing all those tests, and you roll your dice. If you roll a 6, you can spend fate points so that you can keep rolling your dice, and as long as you keep rolling the maximum number, that keeps adding to your success. Concerning dice, when you roll a 1, a 2, or a 3, that's a failure, or a snake as they call it here. When you roll a 4, 5, or 6, that's a success, and you basically need to count the number of successes to succeed at different tests. So it's quite a simple game in the more mechanically driven aspect of the rules. And when it comes to persona points, you may tap into this inner reserve of power that may give you additional dice to succeed at different tests, usually related to your nature. And your nature as a mouse, because of the way you use it, you may end up getting too much nature points, or maybe too few. If you reach 7 or 0, you're in a lot of trouble, because when you reach 7, you're just too mouse-like, too mousy, so to speak. So maybe you're just too jumpy, or like too afraid, or performing different missions and tasks. So you're kind of like a scaredy mouse, so to speak. And if you get 0 nature points, your mouse could end up insane. So you have to balance things out, and you can't be exploiting your nature all the time to get that extra bonus during a test, because there's a risk that you may become too mousy or too insane. And it all depends on the way the tasks that you perform have to do something with your nature, because the nature of mice has to do with hiding, climbing, running away. So as long as you perform those things, you're in a relatively safe term when it comes to your nature. But when you fight and you perform things that mice don't usually do, then your nature could be at a bit of trouble when you use it. Now, there is a very interesting structure on how the game plays out. Every session is basically divided in 2 turns: the game master turn and the player's turn. Now, you could think that the game master turn is all about the game master, and the players are quite passive or inactive, but no, that's not it. In a game master turn, the game master is running the show, presenting obstacles to the player characters, and they have to think of ways to succeed, to surpass or overcome those obstacles. So the game master is going to give you a suggestion that there is this river, and you have to cross it somehow. You need to roll this skill, so this number of successes, and using this skill to get across. But the players could also suggest other ways, so it all depends on your creativity. And according to your success or failure, the story could move forward, or if you fail, there could be a twist that takes the story on a different path, usually a more conflicted path, so to speak, more a bit chaotic. But you could also succeed and take a condition. Maybe you managed to cross the river, but your mouse got really tired, so it's sort of like a drawback, or like a penalty, because you managed to pass that test, but you fail at your roll. Now, conflict resolution is one of the best things, in my opinion, of the entire system. It's a very simple combat system. It almost feels a bit like rock, paper, scissors against the game master. Not exactly, but in a sense, it is that way. In each party or each part of the each force of the conflict, those involved in the battle, choose an action, three actions for the entire round, and the game master does the same, and then they start comparing those actions, how they match against each other, and you have a matrix. So sometimes attack has an edge over a certain action, but if you're using a bow, you're going to have a bit of an advantage against someone who is attacking you with a sword. So it's deceptively complex, but it's more deep than anything. It's easy to understand, and it's deep in the sense that it also applies very well. It's quite flexible to carry out different sorts of conflicts. So for example, maybe it's not exactly a battle, maybe, as I was telling you, some sort of contest, and it plays out pretty much the same, but you're not using swords. In the cases you're perhaps building, maybe it's a contest when you have to build furniture, and then you're going, instead of swords and axes, you're going to be using tools such as screwdrivers and hammers. Or if it's a cooking contest, maybe you're using kitchen knives and ovens, and it's that sort of thing. So you can carry out any conflict that you can think of, and it's going to feel satisfying. I'm also surprised at how you can handle some pretty large-scale conflicts with incredible ease. So for example, you could muster an army of 200,000 mice, and you're going to need that army if you, for example, maybe there's a bear attacking your particular settlement of the lands of the mice. You're going to need an army to at least drive away that bear. But killing it could be out of the question, but at least finding some sort of way of driving away that creature. And so you're going to need an army of mice, and during conflicts you handle each force or each side as a single entity. That is, you're not going to keep track of all the health points for each of those 200,000 mice. They have a very simple number, like a number of disposition, it's called, and if you manage to get that your opponent's disposition to 0, you will win that conflict and succeed at your goal for that conflict. So it's not always about killing. You could fight with the intent to kill your opponent, but sometimes it's just driving the opponent away or preventing that opponent from kidnapping someone, etc. And because the mouse guard are so flexible and resourceful at the types of missions that they undertake, you could have escort missions. You have to deliver a message, deliver supplies, explore an unknown trail, see if it's safe, so that the mice can use it to come and go between settlements. So there's a good amount of ideas, virtually an infinity of ideas to perform all sorts of missions. And the book has a lot of information of the setting. So if you're a fan of the Mouse Guard books, this is a must-have for you. And you have information of all the different settlements, of their government, on the type of things that happen there, the trade, or their structure, the size, everything that you can think of. You have information on festivities, on the seasons, and the seasons play a very important part in this role-playing game. The Mother Nature feels like an adversary. You have 4 elements that you should be aware of all the time, which is the wilderness, the mice, and the seasons as well, or the weather, and the animals that you will find in a season, a particular territory. So you can imagine that missions in winter that are probably the hardest could get quite nightmarish, because you're not only going to be fighting against wild animals and trying to move across the snow and all those trees, and everything is just really cold. You're also going to have to deal with the conflicts that arise related to mice or to animals, or you could get sick because you didn't take the proper precautions and you failed your role. So it feels quite deep. It's interesting how this game handles so many things at the same time, and they don't overwhelm you. So it's a very complete game, and you have a bestiary with all sorts of animals. You have weasels, and you have crows, bears, and birds as well. And some animals are just impossible to defeat with a party of mice. For example, the snapping turtle is just really tough. You have an illustration of the snapping turtle here. There are some animals that you're just going to think on how to avoid, or how to drive away from a particular settlement. And I really like the art. You can feel the mood. You can feel the warmth of the different fires and lamps that they have there, and you feel like you're inside those places, because the entire game feels a lot like a version of Dark Ages or Middle Ages Europe, with castles and fortresses. And everything is just perfectly expressed through the illustrations. And you have a wide variety of skills to customize your mouse, and as you use those skills, you're going to become better at employing them against different obstacles. And you learn from your successes and your failures as well. So you should be trying to use your skills as much as possible, so you can level up at the end of the mission. And you have a lot of pre-generated characters and rules on how to tweak those templates. And you have rules to create your characters. You also have information on common mouse names, and you can tailor everything about your mouse, your fur color, who are your parents, your mentor, your enemy, your friend, and things mean different qualities of mice. So for example, depending on your cloak color, it may represent something close to your ideals. A particular color represents an aspect of your mouse's philosophy. And your fur color could be somewhat common, like brown, or it could be something more uncommon or rare, such as red and black. Now, and that's just talking a bit about the game master turn. Now let's talk about the player's turn. In the player's turn, the players are the ones running the show. They are the ones saying what they want their mouse to do. Maybe I want my mouse to explore a bit more of his relationship with his friend. He wants to visit his parents. He wants to practice some sparring with his bitter rival. So, and during those times, the players are going to develop many things, both in theme and in rules related to his or her mouse. And you can't perform just everything you want. You have a certain limit according to how you perform during Game Master's turn. For example, you have something called traits, and these traits could aid you during different tests, but you could also use them to hinder yourself. And why would you hinder yourself? Well, that gives you more opportunities to act during the player's turn by checking that trait. So for example, maybe you're stubborn, and you could use this stubbornness to overcome different obstacles, but you could also use them to lose at an argument that you're just too stubborn trying to defend a point, but that gives you a check, so you can do more stuff during the player's turn, which is probably the best opportunity you have to develop your mouse. And I'm not even scratching the surface of the depth of this game. There are so many things related to how the story moves along, and the many things that the mice can do. It's going to be missions of protecting all of the mice, on guiding them through different paths, maybe rescuing a mouse that got lost in the forest or in the swamp. And depending on the season, each season feels incredibly different. You could have adventures on a single territory, and as the seasons change, you're going to feel like you're traveling through dimensions, because summer is very different from from fall or from winter. It's quite obvious, but in the game it feels a lot more so, and each season presents different hazards. You're going to see flash floods, extreme temperatures, and cold that could end up freezing your mouse to death. This game is amazing. Let me tell you what I think overall. It's perfect. This box set is perfect, and the size of the box, you can carry it around to visit your friend or whatever, and you're going to have an entire game and its expansion, and you're going to have a lot of interesting adventures that's going to surprise your average role player, because the character development is huge. As you try to get into the mind of your mouse and play along according to his goals, to his objectives, to his beliefs, and be rewarded for it. That's a very important point. This game rewards intelligent role play. You're going to create some really exciting and sometimes really serious missions and adventures that you wouldn't expect of a game with anthropomorphic mouse or mice, sorry. So overall, I highly recommend this box set. You should definitely get it, and because the theme is so flexible, even though it's gritty and serious, you could also modify it to play it with little kids. But if you want to play with adults, just play it as it is, with mice who are fighting snakes and weasels and also insects, and having some really gruesome battles, but at the same time celebrating the joy of being alive, the frailty of life, and overall just thriving and surviving in a huge world where a little mouse has to rely on his wit and his sword to have a happy life. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know.